Episode 4 Roll Horde. Eventually, the last small guild I was a part of on Feathermood disbanded by way of people not logging in anymore. One of my good friends and guildmates suggested that I follow him to his other server he'd re-rolled on. I jumped at the chance to try something new, since the groups I had been getting with my rogue were drying up. At this point on Feathermoon, I was just about geared to the max that I could get by myself, without either paying for raids or going hardcore, air quotes, and joining a raiding guild. When I rolled on this new server, the Venture Co., an RP PvP realm, I had to play catch up with my friend because he was already level 40 at the time and I was just starting new. Since I'd always heard at this time that hunters were the fastest levelers, I decided to roll a troll hunter. They got +5 to bows. Like, why wouldn't you want to roll a troll? And the racial was pretty awesome with increasing attack speed. So that was pretty cool. I don't remember much from the leveling process, to be honest, but I do recall always having to watch my back since this was my first time on a PvP server. Eventually I wanted to find a guild on this server and saw a rather ubiquitous guild that looked like fun. This guild was called Grunts. The main idea behind this guild was to protect other Horde members and answer global calls for assistance when the Alliance struck. Mind you, that this was also an RP guild, so the whole faction war was a big part of that guild. There were scheduled PvP events on the forums and lots of smaller engagements that took place almost daily. Lots of world defense calls, people asking for help in a zone. It was actually like I don't want to say like a guild rule, but it was something that you were expected to participate in and help defend the Horde. It was so much fun. More fun when you got to the higher levels, of course, because you could, really help protect and defend zones. But it was definitely more fun to come into a zone and help protect lobbies or quest hubs from Alliance players. It really did feel personal and like a war because you were fighting alongside your brother and sister Horde members against the enemy. The spontaneity of it was really what made it so much fun. You could be questing in your zone, watching for Alliance 1 minute, and then the next get called back to the crossroads to help defend it from that pesky Night Elf rogue that always raided at 5 p.m. on weeknights, or a full-on assault from an Alliance raid from Ratchet. I do recall finally getting to 60 and starting to PvP more regularly. This was still in the time of no cross-realms battlegrounds, and you knew your opponent or their guild. Being on a PvP-based guild, you always had a target on your back. My friend had helped me with a new PvP build for my hunter when I reached level 60. I had been primarily marksman up to that point while leveling, but he had a survival build that really did well for his survivability in PvP, and after a little experimentation, I definitely wanted to try it out. I recall using this build for the first time and feeling so lost. I had to relearn how to play my class in PvP. Quick side note, this is something I look forward to again in Classic. Switching specs should really change how you play your character. You shouldn't play it the same whether you're marksman, beastmaster, or survival. And I'm pretty sure in Legion they got rid of pets for hunters, so I'm definitely looking forward to pets coming back. Onward to Battlegrounds. Battlegrounds and the Undergrind were real back then. Here are a few examples of how committed I was to getting up in the PvP ranks. First one. Human functions still happen while grinding. So when I had to shower, I would set an alarm for 5 minutes. This was when I was in a battleground, mind you. Every time that alarm went off, I would hop out of the shower, press spacebar and W to move forward to clear any AFK timer, then hop back in the shower and try and finish before that timer went off again. This helped me avoid the long queues to re-enter battlegrounds should you AFK out. Uh, I was one of those guys. It didn't happen very regularly. You know, we're looking at a couple times a week, maybe, but really no more than that. Next up, everybody's got to eat, right? So like dinner, lunch. I didn't really eat a lot of breakfast back then. Didn't have a job at this particular point in my vanilla WoW experience. I was a freeloader. But anyways, we're talking about WoW here, not me. Well, kind of me and WoW, I guess, but not gaming past 30s, younger years. So anyways, dinner and lunch was a similar chore to keep in the queue or battleground. I would make food downstairs with the sound turned up to 11, just in case the queue popped. You know, if I heard that glorious sound telling me that I had been chosen to represent the Horde in another battleground, I had to beat feet upstairs and click the magic button in time to make the battle, then run downstairs. In the meantime, the microwave or oven would be going off, letting me know that my food was ready or burnt, then carry the piping hot food back upstairs in time to follow the main group out of the starting cave. At this point in AV's history, our starting zone was much closer to the towers, the first Horde graveyard. I'll show you a picture of the map here where the graveyard was compared to where it is, I assume, in Legion. I haven't PvP'd in Legion, so I assume they've kept it way back by the Horde base. I remember defending the first line of towers was awesome as a hunter because you could shoot down at the passing allies and guard your back with traps covered by flares. This was at a time, you'll remember, when rogues couldn't shadow step behind you in a tower. So they still had to run up the tower, and usually your flare or your trap would pick them up. Unless you forgot to renew it, and then they could get the jump on you. But you always had that option to like jump out of the tower, wing clip, retrap. You still had a few options. If anyone actually stopped to duel me long range, I could just sneak back in the tower in the little covered space in the middle by the flag and feign death, trap, flare, and bandage or eat to heal. I forgot to mention at this point, the friend I'd been playing with, re-rolled on the server with, had stopped playing WoW. Unfortunately, we never stayed in touch, and I don't know if he ever came back to the game or not, or where he went after that. Never touched base with him in Burning Crusade, unfortunately. Yeah, it was kind of a sad thing, but honestly, re-rolling, I was so grateful to him because my time PvPing and the guild and friends I made on the new server were awesome. I wouldn't have traded that time for anything back then. Now we go back to the AV grind. Why AV instead of, Warsong Gulch or AB? It certainly wasn't the best for the PvP grind, if I remember. The honor per hour wasn't up there, and pre-made Warsong Gulch or Wrathy Basin groups were definitely better, and how people got to the higher ranks, if I recall correctly. They had like pre-made groups that they would grind out high warlords, and they'd take their turns getting it. But in AV, I just enjoyed the wide open spaces and the ability to find more small skirmishes and run away from the bigger ones. Towers and graveyards were my favorite zones to fight. Every now and then I'd stop in the middle in the field of strife, but more often than not it was defending or attacking a small tower and getting a lot of one-on-one battles. Real personal with people you knew because you knew everyone on the Alliance side that PvP'd for the most part, and they knew you. So sometimes people would literally run away from you, or you would get a mob of people chasing you because of your guild name. Both instances were very entertaining and fun. Hunters still had that annoying dead zone back then, but as survival, I had a few more tricks up my sleeve that let me either slow my opponent enough to get into range, or do enough damage to finish them off up close. I remember wing clip. With improved wing clip, you could stick someone in place. I think it was a 25% chance, if I recall, and they would be glued in space, and you could just back up, not literally walk backwards. That's not how you did it, but if you knew how to kite properly. You could just then get them and concussed and kite them and just eat them up slowly. And hopefully your pet didn't die while they were beating on it because they were stuck in place. But anyways, back to it. I remember grinding up to rank 10 and almost reaching rank 11 right before they changed the ranking system. It was literally a week away from me getting my epic mount, and bam, honor system revamp. I was pissed. I remember being so disheartened by that change. I worked so hard to get there. I was so proud of getting to rank 10, and then they changed it. This is when they added the battleground token system for items instead of grinding for ranks. I hope I'll have a graphic up there to show this change. I know this made it easier to get items for a lot of players, but it really took the prestige. I mean, yeah, I get it. It was all about your free time and how much free time you had, and a little bit of skill, but mainly about your free time, who you knew. I still remember PvPing, but it was not the same, and I definitely didn't PvP with the same single-minded determination and the drive to get that rank for the next week, because it was definitely something where I don't remember there being a lot of calculations on your honor and whatnot, but there were definitely like goals you try for. I really don't remember what it was, but there's some wikis out there that show you nowadays, so it'll be a known quantity going into Classic if they decide, however they decide to do it, if they want to do the patch at a time, where it'll be something where there is a weekly grind for a few months, and then they'll go to the token system later, or if they're just going to release the token system at the end of vanilla. It'll be interesting to see how they choose to do that. But I do recall finally getting all the epic gear that I'd always wanted and aspired for. Even though it felt a little hollow, I definitely enjoyed showing that off because I could get it pretty quick with the better gear I had. Because a lot more people started PvPing once they changed the system because they didn't have to put quite as much time in. But it was around this time, after getting that gear, that myself and a larger group of higher geared players in my guild left that guild. And here's what happened. We'd been planning to start a raid group, and then our GM found out and was none too happy with us. The main organizers of the raid group were kicked or forced out of the guild for not involving the leadership and making an in-crowd in the guild that was exclusive to other members. Remember, this guild was meant to be like a social, if I didn't explain earlier, social guild where we mainly did world PvP, defense, organized events, those kind of things. So raiding wasn't what they were supposed to do, and this guild took like the RP stuff pretty seriously, so they were not happy that we had decided to do this. And since that wasn't the focus, raiding, and not being sanctioned by the GM, it wasn't hard to see why this happened looking back, but man, at the time I was stoked to raid on my hunter, only to have that dream broken before it could really get off the ground. I recall this was the main reason that I left that guild and stopped playing my hunter on the Venture Co. PvP was just not the same for me after that, and wasn't a focus until arenas in the Burning Crusade and some of Wrath of the Lich King. But I'll go over those when we get to the Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King. I'm hoping to maybe get my brother on with me so we could talk about some of our arenas and some of our stories. And just remember, wool bandages. I'm just going to throw that out there. Wool bandages when we get to the Burning Crusade. Alright, you've been warned. So, after leaving the Venture Co., I went back to my rogue on Feathermoon and got myself ready for the Burning Crusade's launch. My rogue got to raid Zul'Grub and one or two Molten Cores before the Burning Crusade's launch. An old friend on Feathermoon of one of the smaller guilds had created and was running a decent-sized raiding guild at the time I returned, and sometimes they needed extra melee DPS. I was lucky enough to have enough free time back then that I was usually available to help fill that role. Also right around this time, the pre-launch events were happening around Azeroth, and I was able to partake in those. Those were definitely enjoyable. a blast to take part of. It was kind of hard to figure out when they were happening, but if you could catch them, they were great. There was a quest line back then that you could follow, like a pre-expansion quest line. There was a tabard that I got from that quest, and that was pretty cool. I still remember showing off that tabard as like throughout Burning Crusade, and more actually I would say into Wrath, because there were a lot more people who hadn't been around in Burning Crusade or Vanilla. So I got a lot more questions about it, because that's kind of what some of your gear's for, right? To, I wouldn't say show off, but show people that you're committed to the game and you put your time in. So that's it for this episode, guys and gals. Thanks for listening this far. I know that it's not the longest one yet, but it's pretty close. For the next episode, I plan on talking about, you guessed it, the Burning Crusades launch and leveling to 70 on my Hunter and my Rogue. But I also have a fun little tale about how I actually acquired my copy of Burning Crusade that I'm going to save for that episode, because I like telling it, and I'm sure it's not as interesting as I'm making it out to be, but you're going to hear it anyways, because if you're here, you're listening to me talk, and for some reason you're still listening, so you get to hear it. Remember to stay positive about Classic WoW, and I'll see you guys next time. Gaming Pass 30 out.
Even these children of the underworld